A chance encounter in the streets of the city. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the bustling streets of the city. The air was thick with the scent of spices and freshly baked bread, as people hurriedly made their way home to break their fast during the sacred month of Ramadan. Among the crowd, a woman stood on the corner outside a small grocery store, clutching a worn-out bag filled with meager supplies. Her name was Amina. Amina was a single mother, struggling to provide for her young children while juggling a full-time job. Her life had been a series of challenges, but like many mothers, she kept pushing forward with resilience and determination. She had learned to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders, always putting her children's needs first, even if it meant sacrificing her own well-being. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Amina's exhaustion became more evident. Her eyes were tired, her face etched with the toll of endless work and worry. It had been a long, hard day, and the thought of making a meal for her children with the few ingredients in her bag felt like another insurmountable task. But she couldn't afford to let them down. Not during Ramadan, a month that was supposed to bring peace, reflection, and blessings. Amina's thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. "Excuse me, ma'am," the voice said gently. She turned, her heart skipping a beat as she locked eyes with none other than Keanu Reeves. He stood before her, wearing a simple jacket and jeans, his expression warm and sincere. Amina blinked, unsure if she was imagining the scene. Was this really him? The actor, the one who was known for his kindness and humility. She had seen him on TV, on the big screen, but never in a million years did she expect to meet him like this, on a quiet evening during Ramadan in the middle of the city. Keanu smiled at her, a kindness in his eyes that seemed to shine brighter than the setting sun. "I couldn't help but notice you standing here alone," he said. "Are you all right? Can I help you with something?" Amina's mind raced. She wasn't sure how to respond. How could she explain the weight she carried, the struggles she faced every single day? How could she explain the depths of her exhaustion and the pressure to provide for her children during this sacred time of fasting? But before she could speak, Keanu's voice interrupted her thoughts again. "I know it's not easy, especially during Ramadan," he said, his tone gentle but understanding. "If there's anything I can do to help, I want to." Amina felt her throat tighten. The world around her seemed to blur as emotions she had kept hidden for so long began to rise to the surface. Here, in front of her, was a man who was offering kindness without any expectation of anything in return. He wasn't just an actor or a celebrity. He was a human being showing empathy in a moment of need. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to say. I'm just trying to make sure my kids have enough for iftar tonight." Keanu nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know how important that is. No one should have to worry about food during this time." He glanced down at her bag, then back at her. Amina could see that he was deep in thought, as though he was trying to come up with a way to make things easier for her. "I'll tell you what," Keanu said after a moment, his voice filled with quiet determination. "I'm going to take you to the store, and we'll get everything you need for dinner. Don't worry about a thing. Tonight, you won't have to carry the weight alone." Amina felt her heart swell with gratitude, but she was reluctant to accept. She didn't want to burden this stranger, this man she had only just met. But Keanu's expression was unwavering. There was no judgment in his eyes, no sense of superiority. Just pure kindness. "I can't," she began, but he gently interrupted her. "You don't have to worry," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Let me help. We all need a little support sometimes. Ramadan is about community and giving, and I'm happy to do that for you." Amina's eyes filled with tears as she realized the depth of his offer. This wasn't just a simple act of charity. It was a demonstration of humanity at its best. Keanu Reeves, a man she had only seen in movies, was now standing before her, offering help when she needed it most. She felt a wave of relief wash over her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to accept kindness. As they walked toward the grocery store, Amina couldn't help but marvel at how something so simple could mean so much. Keanu was just a man who understood the struggles of others and chose to act on his empathy. His generosity wasn't about public recognition or accolades. It was simply about making a difference in someone's life when they least expected it. The store was just a short walk away, and as they entered, Amina felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. Keanu led her down the aisles, picking out items she needed for the meal. There was no rush, no pressure, just a quiet, compassionate presence by her side. She didn't have to say much. Keanu seemed to know exactly what she needed. As they approached the checkout counter, Amina felt a sense of overwhelming gratitude. "I can't thank you enough," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You've made this Ramadan so much easier for me. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Keanu smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "You don't have to repay me. Just take care of yourself and your children. That's all that matters." In that moment, Amina realized something profound. The world wasn't as cold and indifferent as it sometimes seemed. There were still people out there, people who cared, people who would step up to help when others were in need. And sometimes, kindness could come from the most unexpected places. As they left the store, bags in hand, Amina's heart was full. She felt lighter, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She knew that tonight, her children would have a proper meal for iftar, and that was something she hadn't been sure she could provide. But now, thanks to Keanu, she had everything she needed. As they parted ways, Keanu offered one last piece of advice. "Take care of yourself, Amina. Life may be tough, but you're tougher. Keep going, and remember, you're never alone." With that, he walked away, disappearing into the evening crowd. Amina stood there for a moment, overwhelmed by the kindness of a stranger who had become a lifeline. She looked up at the sky, the stars beginning to twinkle in the fading light, and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. That night, as Amina sat down to break her fast with her children, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of hope. Ramadan was more than just a time of fasting. It was a time of giving, of connecting with others, and of remembering that in this vast world, kindness could make all the difference. And as for Keanu Reeves, his simple act of generosity had done more than provide a meal. It had reminded Amina that the human spirit was capable of remarkable things, even in the darkest of times. The ripple effect of kindness. The evening had settled into a quiet calm, and Amina sat in the warmth of her small apartment, surrounded by the laughter and chatter of her children. The meal they shared that night was nothing extravagant, but it was filled with love, a love that had been renewed by a single act of kindness. As her children devoured the food, their faces lighting up with joy, Amina's mind kept wandering back to the unexpected encounter she'd had earlier that day. Keanu Reeves, the man she had seen on TV and admired for his humble reputation, had gone far beyond a simple gesture. He had seen her struggle not as something to pity, but as something worth supporting. And that made all the difference. She had always known how hard it was to juggle motherhood, work, and the weight of her responsibilities. But on that day, a stranger had made her feel seen. And that was something she hadn't felt in a long time. As Amina cleared the table, her thoughts drifted back to the evening. After Keanu had walked away, she had stood there for a long while, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over her. She wasn't used to receiving help, let alone from someone who could easily afford not to care. But Keanu had done more than just buy groceries. He had offered something deeper. His words, his actions, his quiet generosity, all felt like a reminder that in the midst of hardship, there were still people who cared. The next morning, as Amina prepared for another long day of work, she found herself reflecting on what had transpired. She had always prided herself on being independent, on managing everything herself. But Keanu had shown her that it wasn't a weakness to accept help. It was a strength to recognize when you needed it. He had given her something more precious than food. He had given her hope. As the days passed, Amina's life slowly began to shift in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't that the challenges she faced had disappeared, But something in her had changed. She no longer felt as if she was carrying the weight of the world alone. The memory of Keanu's kindness lingered in her heart, and it inspired her to reach out to others who might need help too. One day, as she was walking to the grocery store to pick up a few things for her children, she passed a woman sitting on the sidewalk outside a small cafe. The woman's clothes were tattered, and she had an empty cup beside her, her face weary and worn. Amina's heart ached as she recognized the look in the woman's eyes, the same exhaustion, the same sense of defeat that she herself had often felt. Without thinking, Amina stopped. She remembered the way Keanu had approached her, how he had offered his help without hesitation or judgment. In that moment, Amina decided to do the same. She knelt down beside the woman and smiled gently. "Are you all right?" Amina asked softly. The woman looked up, startled by the kindness in Amina's voice. I'm fine," she said quietly, though her voice betrayed the exhaustion that lay beneath the words. Just waiting for the day to pass. Amina knew that feeling all too well. The feeling of waiting, of hoping that something, anything, might change. "Would you like to come with me?" Amina asked. "I'm going to get some food for my kids. I can pick up something for you too." The woman's eyes widened with surprise. "You'd do that for me?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. Amina smiled again, her heart filled with the same compassion that Keanu had shown her. "Of course. We all need a little help sometimes." The woman hesitated for a moment, then nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She had clearly been on the verge of giving up, but Amina's kindness gave her a spark of hope she hadn't had in a long time. As they walked together to the grocery store, Amina shared her story with the woman, just as Keanu had shared his own quiet encouragement with her. She talked about the challenges of being a single mother, of working long hours, and still struggling to make ends meet. And as she spoke, she realized that she wasn't just telling the woman her story. She was letting go of some of her own burdens too. By helping the woman, Amina was healing herself. In the store, they picked out food for both her family and the woman. It wasn't much, but it was enough to offer a sense of comfort and security for the day. Amina paid for the groceries, just as Keanu had done for her. And together, they walked back to the woman's spot on the sidewalk. Before parting ways, Amina placed a hand on the woman's shoulder. "Take care of yourself," she said. "Things will get better. You just have to keep going." The woman looked at her with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what to say." Amina smiled. "You don't need to say anything. Just know that someone cares." As Amina walked away, she felt a sense of fulfillment that went far beyond the physical act of helping. It was a feeling of connection, of being part of something bigger than herself. Keanu's kindness had rippled through her, creating a chain of compassion that would continue to spread. The more she gave, the more she received in return. She was beginning to see that kindness didn't just heal others, it healed her too. Days turned into weeks, and Amina found herself taking small actions of kindness whenever she could. She helped a neighbor carry heavy groceries. She offered a listening ear to a coworker going through a tough time, and she donated clothes to a local shelter. Each time she did, she remembered the warmth in Keanu's eyes, the sincerity in his voice. She had learned from the best, and in turn, she had become a source of light for others. One evening, as Amina was sitting with her children, she noticed something unexpected. Her eldest daughter, Layla, had been talking to her friends about how much she appreciated the small acts of kindness she had seen in their family. Layla had seen her mother go out of her way to help others, and she was following her example. "Mama," Layla said, her eyes shining with pride, "I told my friends about the woman you helped on the street. They think it's amazing how you always try to make people feel better." Amina smiled, her heart swelling with love for her daughter. "Kindness is something we all can share," she said softly. "It's a way of reminding others that they're not alone, that we're all in this together." Layla nodded, her small face filled with understanding. "I want to do that too, Mama. I want to help people, just like you." and Mr. Keanu. Amina's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't realized until that moment just how much of an impact Keanu's simple gesture had made, not just on her, but on her children as well. The lessons of kindness, compassion, and community were being passed down, one small act at a time. And as Amina tucked her children into bed that night, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the stranger who had unknowingly set this new chapter of her life in motion. Keanu Reeves had changed her life, but more than that, he had shown her the power of one person's kindness to transform the lives of many. His actions were like a stone thrown into a pond, sending ripples of compassion far and wide. In a world often filled with uncertainty, Amina had learned that kindness was a constant, a force that could bring people together, heal wounds, and light the way for others to follow. And she, too, had become a part of that force. The power of generosity. Amina woke up to the sound of her children playing in the next room, their laughter echoing through the small apartment. It was a simple morning, but one that felt full of promise. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a soft glow over the room as Amina made her way to the kitchen. As she prepared breakfast, her thoughts were occupied with the events of the past few weeks. Keanu's kindness had changed everything, in ways she hadn't even anticipated. For the first time in a long while, Amina felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't just the relief of not having to worry about where the next meal would come from. It was something deeper. It was the reminder that there was goodness in the world, even in the most difficult times. As she placed breakfast on the table, Layla came running in, her little face bright with excitement. "Mama, guess what?" she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. "I helped a lady on the bus today." Amina's heart swelled with pride. Her daughter, so young, was already learning the importance of helping others. "Tell me about it, sweetie," Amina said, sitting down beside her. Layla sat across from her, her hands animated as she spoke. "There was this lady on the bus, and she didn't have enough money for her ticket. I gave her some of my allowance, and she smiled at me and said thank you. It made me feel really good, Mama." Amina felt a lump form in her throat. Her daughter, who had always been so thoughtful, had now taken her first steps toward becoming someone who not only received kindness, but also gave it freely. Keanu's act of generosity had planted a seed in Amina's heart, but now it seemed that the seed had taken root and was blossoming in her children as well. She couldn't help but wonder just how far this ripple effect would go. "That was very kind of you, Layla," Amina said softly, her voice full of emotion. "I'm so proud of you." The conversation about kindness continued throughout the day. That evening, Amina decided to take her children to the local park after dinner. The weather was perfect, with a cool breeze that carried the scent of fresh grass and blooming flowers. The park was quiet, with only a few families scattered around enjoying the evening. As they walked toward the playground, Amina couldn't help but think of all the small acts of kindness that had been filling her life lately. She and her children played together, laughing and enjoying the simplicity of being together. But even in this peaceful moment, Amina knew that there were still people out there who were struggling just as she had. People who might not have the support they needed, who might not have anyone to turn to. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Amina's mind wandered back to the day she had met Keanu. She remembered the way he had looked at her, like he saw her not just as a mother or a woman struggling to get by, but as a person who deserved kindness, respect, and help. And that made her think, if Keanu could do something as simple as buying her groceries, then surely she could do something for others too. The following day, Amina decided to visit the local food bank. She had a few extra cans of food she could spare, and she knew that there were people who needed them more than she did. When she arrived, she was greeted by a volunteer who took her donation gratefully. As she left, Amina felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. She hadn't been able to give much, but what she had given mattered. And that mattered more than she could put into words. That afternoon, while shopping for some household necessities, Amina came across a young man in the store, his arms full of diapers and formula. He looked tired, his face lined with worry. He was holding a small baby, no older than a few months, who was quietly crying in his arms. Amina instinctively stepped forward, her heart going out to him. She had been in his shoes, feeling like the weight of the world was on her shoulders, unsure of how she was going to make it through the day. She smiled gently at him. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice kind and steady. The young man looked at her with a tired smile. "Just trying to get everything I need," he said. "But it's tough, you know. I don't always have enough." Amina's heart ached for him. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the same weariness that she had felt so many times before. Without thinking, she reached into her purse and pulled out the cash she had saved for the week. She handed it to him, pressing it into his palm with a soft, reassuring smile. "Take this," she said gently. "It's not much, but it will help." The young man blinked in surprise. I can't accept this," he stammered. Amina shook her head. "Please," she insisted. "It's a small act of kindness. We all need help sometimes." He hesitated for a moment longer, then nodded. "Thank you. Really, thank you. You don't know how much this means to me." As Amina turned and walked away, she felt something stir inside her, a sense of purpose that had been ignited by a simple act of generosity. Just like Keanu had done for her, she had been able to give something meaningful to someone else. And in that moment, she understood that kindness didn't always need to be grand or public. It didn't need to be seen by millions or acknowledged by the world. Sometimes, the smallest gestures had the biggest impact. That night, as she sat down with her children for dinner, Amina felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that the kindness she had received from Keanu had not only helped her in a moment of need, but had also awakened something within her. It was as if a spark had been lit, and now that spark was lighting the way for others as well. Each small act of kindness, whether it was helping a stranger, supporting a friend, or teaching her children to be kind, was part of a larger picture. In the quiet of her home, Amina reflected on how far she had come. It hadn't been an easy journey. There were still days when she struggled, when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming. But now she knew she wasn't alone. Keanu had shown her the power of empathy, of generosity, and of community. And in turn, she was passing those lessons on to her children, teaching them that kindness was the key to healing the world. As Amina finished her meal, her heart was full. She thought of the woman she had helped at the grocery store, the young father at the store that afternoon, and the many others who had touched her life. She thought of Keanu, who had started it all, and how his simple, quiet gesture had set off a ripple effect of goodness. And in that moment, Amina knew something profound. Kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change lives. It could heal wounds, brighten the darkest days, and bring people together in ways that words alone could never express. It was a force more powerful than anything else in the world, and Amina was ready to share it with everyone she met. As the evening settled into night, she whispered a prayer of gratitude, not just for the food on her table, but for the people who had touched her life, and for the strength she had found in the kindness of others. A path transformed by compassion. The days drifted by, each one carrying Amina further from the struggles that once seemed insurmountable. It wasn't that the challenges in her life had disappeared. They hadn't. The bills still piled up, the responsibilities still loomed large, and the relentless pace of daily life remained the same. But Amina felt something different now, something she couldn't quite explain. It was as though the weight she had been carrying had lessened, and in its place was a quiet sense of purpose, a new understanding of the world around her. Keanu's kindness had opened her eyes, not just to the generosity of others, but to the profound impact a single act of compassion could have. His gesture of buying her groceries hadn't just filled her stomach, it had nourished her soul. And now, Amina was beginning to see how she could pay that kindness forward, how the ripple effect could reach far beyond her own life. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Amina's life took another unexpected turn. She had been at work, a job she had held for several years at a small but busy accounting firm, when a colleague, Sarah, came to her with a troubled expression. "Amina, do you have a moment?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with concern. Amina looked up from her desk, setting aside the stack of papers she had been reviewing. "Of course. What's wrong?" Sarah sat down across from Amina, her hands wringing nervously. I'm not sure how to say this, but things are really tough at home right now," she began. "My husband lost his job last month, and we've been barely getting by on my salary. I've been trying to find a way to make ends meet, but the bills keep piling up, and now the car's broken down, and we can't even afford to fix it." She paused, her eyes filling with unused tears. "I don't know what to do, Amina. I'm scared." Amina's heart broke as she listened to Sarah's words. She had known that Sarah was a hard worker, someone who always did her best to keep her head above water. But now, sitting across from her, Amina saw the vulnerability in her eyes, the same vulnerability she had once felt in her own life. Without thinking, Amina reached out and placed a hand on Sarah's. "You're not alone in this," she said quietly. "I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning, but you don't have to go through it by yourself. Let me help." Sarah blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to help you find a solution," Amina said, her voice steady but full of empathy. "Let me talk to my landlord and see if there's any way we can work something out. And if you need help with groceries, I can bring over some food from home. You've been there for me when I've needed support. Let me return the favor." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she gazed at Amina. "But I can't ask you to do that. I know you have your own family and your own things to worry about." Amina shook her head, her expression soft but firm. "You're my friend, Sarah. You've helped me, and now I want to help you. We don't need to carry our burdens alone. You've always been there for me, and I'll be here for you." It wasn't much, Amina knew, but she could see how much Sarah needed someone to lean on, someone who would listen and offer support in a time of crisis. It wasn't about money or grand gestures. It was about showing up for each other in the small, meaningful ways that made all the difference. In the days that followed, Amina worked tirelessly to help Sarah in whatever way she could. She spoke to her landlord, managed to arrange an extension on Sarah's rent, and helped organize a crowdfunding campaign to cover the cost of the car repairs. She didn't have much to give, but she gave what she could, and Sarah's gratitude was overwhelming. It wasn't just the material help that made a difference. It was the sense of solidarity and the reminder that they didn't have to face life's challenges in isolation. And as Amina helped Sarah, she realized something profound. The act of giving, of being there for someone when they needed it most, didn't just help the person receiving. It transformed the giver as well. She had learned this from Keanu, and now she was living it out in her own life. Each time she extended herself to help someone, she felt more connected to the world around her, more in tune with the deep well of compassion that existed within her. It was a Saturday morning when Amina decided to visit the local shelter to volunteer. She had been thinking about it for weeks, ever since she had seen the woman on the streets who had reminded her so much of herself. She had been so focused on her own struggles that she hadn't realized how many others were facing their own battles. And now, it seemed, it was time to do something about it. The shelter was tucked away in a quiet part of the city, a small building that looked unassuming from the outside, but was a beacon of hope for so many. When Amina arrived, she was greeted by the shelter's director, a warm woman named Clara, who led her inside. The space was modest but clean, with rows of cots set up in the main room and a small kitchen where volunteers prepared meals for the residents. Clara gave Amina a tour of the shelter and explained how it operated. "We provide food, shelter, and support for people who are experiencing homelessness," she said. "But it's more than just a place to sleep. We offer counseling, job assistance, and help with reintegrating into society. Our goal is to give people the tools they need to get back on their feet." Amina listened intently, her heart aching as she saw the faces of the people in the shelter. They were all ages, all walks of life, each with their own story of hardship and struggle. She realized that, like her, they had once been filled with hope but had been knocked down by life's challenges. And like her, they too were capable of rising again. Over the next few weeks, Amina volunteered regularly at the shelter, helping prepare meals, organizing clothing drives, and offering support to those who needed it most. She spent time talking to the residents, listening to their stories, and offering encouragement when they seemed most defeated. And with each day that passed, she felt herself becoming more and more connected to the people around her. But it wasn't just the people she was helping who were changing. It was Amina herself. She realized that the more she gave, the more her own sense of fulfillment grew. There was something deeply satisfying about being part of something bigger than herself, about making a real difference in the lives of others. And each time she saw someone leave the shelter with renewed hope, she knew that the kindness she had received from Keanu was now a part of her, a part that she could pass on, just as he had done for her. One evening, as Amina was leaving the shelter after a long shift, she was stopped by Clara. "Amina, I just wanted to thank you," Clara said, her voice warm. "You've made such a difference here. The people you've helped, the time you've given, it's all been so meaningful." Amina smiled, her heart full. "I'm just doing what I can. I've been where they are, Clara. I know what it feels like to feel lost and alone." Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. Sometimes that's exactly what people need to hear, the reminder that they're not alone. Your kindness is a light in the darkness for so many people, Amina. You've become a beacon of hope, just like the people who helped you when you needed it most. Amina was quiet for a moment, the weight of Clara's words settling in her heart. She had started this journey feeling like she was barely holding on. But now, with each passing day, she realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. And it wasn't because of the things she had, or the challenges she had overcome. It was because of the people she had helped, the kindness she had shared, and the way her life had become intertwined with the lives of others. And as Amina walked home that night, the cool evening breeze carrying the sounds of the city around her, she knew that her journey had only just begun. There was still so much to do, so many lives to touch, and so many hearts to heal. But as long as she carried the lessons of compassion and kindness that Keanu had shown her, she knew that no matter what came her way, she would always find a way to make the world a little bit brighter. In the end, it was the people she had met along the way, the ones who had shown her love when she had none left to give, that had changed her life. And now, it was her turn to pass that light on. The unseen bonds of kindness. The warmth of the morning sun seeped through the curtains as Amina sat on the edge of her bed, lost in thought. The last few months had unfolded like a tapestry, one thread of kindness connecting to the next, weaving a story of transformation that had taken her from a place of uncertainty to one of purpose. She had once believed that life was something to survive, that each day was a battle to endure. But now, she understood that life was something to be shared, to be lived with others, in kindness, empathy, and compassion. Each small act of generosity had contributed to this change in her life. The ripple effect that began with Keanu had created waves that spread throughout her community, reaching people she never thought she could touch. And every time she offered help to someone in need, she found herself growing stronger, more connected to the world around her. She was no longer just a woman struggling to get by. She was part of a larger network of people who had learned the power of giving. It was on a quiet Saturday morning, as Amina prepared breakfast for her children, that the phone rang. She had been expecting a call from Sarah, her coworker who had been struggling, but this call was different. It was from a woman she didn't recognize. "Hello," Amina answered, her voice cautious yet welcoming. "Hi, is this Amina?" The voice on the other end asked, warm but unfamiliar. "My name is Layla, and I was hoping to speak with you. I've been meaning to reach out for a while now." Amina's curiosity piqued, and she nodded even though she knew the woman couldn't see her. "Yes, this is Amina. How can I help you? I'm not sure if you remember me, but you helped me a few weeks ago at the grocery store, Layla said. You paid for some of my groceries when I couldn't afford them, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I wanted to reach out and say thank you. But more than that, I wanted to tell you how much that act meant to me. You gave me more than just food. You gave me hope. Amina felt a warm surge in her chest. She remembered Layla. She had been a woman in her mid-30s, struggling with the overwhelming pressures of a single-parent household, much like Amina had once been. I remember you, Amina said, her voice soft. How are you doing now? Layla let out a sigh of relief, and Amina could almost hear the smile in her voice. Things have gotten better, Amina. I don't know how to explain it, but after that day, everything seemed to shift. I found a part-time job, and I've been able to keep up with my bills. More than that, I've been able to provide my kids with what they need. I don't feel as lost anymore. Tears welled up in Amina's eyes as she listened to Layla's words. I'm so glad to hear that, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm happy I could help, even in a small way. Layla paused for a moment before speaking again. Amina, I've been thinking about it a lot. I wanted to pay it forward, to do something for someone else, just like you did for me. And so, I've been volunteering at a local shelter. I've started tutoring some of the children who come in, helping them with their homework, and just being there for them. I never thought I could give back, but you showed me that we all have something to offer. Amina felt a tear slip down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. You're doing amazing work, Layla. You're a beacon of light for those kids, just like you were for me. The two women spoke for a while longer, exchanging stories of how their lives had transformed, and how they now saw the world in a different light. Amina had no idea that a simple act of kindness would have such a lasting impact on someone else. She had given to Layla out of instinct, out of compassion, never expecting anything in return. But now, she saw how the energy she had shared was spreading outward, touching lives in ways she couldn't have predicted. When the call ended, Amina felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The connection between herself and Layla was a reminder of something powerful. Kindness, when passed from one person to another, could create a chain of change. The bond they shared wasn't just one of obligation, it was a shared humanity, a realization that we all have the ability to make a difference. Later that afternoon, Amina decided to visit the shelter where she had been volunteering. She had promised herself she would return each week, not only to help but to witness firsthand the impact of the work being done there. As she walked through the shelter's doors, she was greeted by Clara, the director, who smiled warmly when she saw Amina. Amina, I'm so glad to see you, Clara said. There's someone I want you to meet. Come, I'll introduce you. Clara led Amina to the back of the shelter, where a young woman was sitting at a table, reading a book. She looked up when they approached, her eyes cautious but kind. Clara made the introduction. Amina, this is Nadia. She's been staying here for a while, and I think you two have a lot in common. Amina extended her hand to Nadia, who shook it hesitantly. It's nice to meet you, Amina said gently. How are you doing? Nadia looked down at her hands, unsure of how to answer. I'm okay. I'm trying to figure things out. I've been here for a couple of months, but I'm not sure what my next step should be. Amina smiled, sitting down beside her. I know exactly how you feel. When I first became a single mother, I didn't know what I was doing. Every day felt like a struggle, but what I've learned is that it's okay to ask for help. We don't have to have everything figured out. And sometimes, the next step comes when you least expect it. Nadia looked up at her, her eyes filled with both hope and skepticism. You think so? I know so, Amina replied firmly. You just have to believe that you're capable, even on the tough days. And if there's anything I can do to help, I'm here. The conversation between Amina and Nadia continued for some time. As Amina shared her story and listened to Nadia's, Amina knew that there was so much more she could offer, not just through her words, but through her actions. She had learned that kindness was not just about offering help when it was convenient. It was about being present, about offering your time, and about showing people that they weren't alone. Before leaving that day, Amina offered Nadia her phone number. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm just a call away. And if you need help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. As Amina left the shelter, her heart felt lighter. She had planted another seed of hope, just as Keanu had done for her. She understood now that there was no greater reward than knowing that her actions could change someone's life for the better. Whether it was offering a few dollars, a kind word, or a listening ear, every small act of kindness was a thread that wove people together. That night, as Amina tucked her children into bed, she found herself reflecting on the beautiful web of connections she had created in her life. It wasn't just about what she had given. It was about the relationships that had blossomed as a result. The impact of kindness could never be measured in simple terms. It was felt, not just in the tangible ways it helped, but in the quiet understanding it fostered between people. Amina had once felt like she was carrying the weight of the world alone. But now, she knew she wasn't. She had created a network of people, of friends, strangers, and those she had helped, who were bound together by the invisible thread of compassion. And as she moved forward in her journey, she would continue to weave that thread, sharing kindness wherever she went, knowing that each small act had the power to transform lives. A heart opened by giving. As Amina sat in her modest apartment, her gaze fell on the small photo frame on the counter, the one that held a picture of her children, their faces full of joy and laughter. They had come so far, she thought. Each day felt like a new chapter in a story of resilience, a story of rising above hardships, and perhaps most of all, a story of kindness. Every step she took was marked by the quiet understanding that her life was no longer her own. It was intertwined with the lives of so many others, some she had met along the way, and others she had yet to meet. The phone call from Layla had touched her deeply, reminding her of the unexpected connections that formed when you allowed your heart to be open. But that was just the beginning. There was so much more to the world than the narrow lens through which she had once viewed it. Helping Sarah through her difficulties, meeting people at the shelter, and volunteering. Each experience had broadened her understanding of what it meant to truly live with compassion. But Amina was beginning to see that her own transformation was not a solitary event. It was the result of a community being built around mutual care. Today was no different. Amina had woken up early, her heart lighter than usual, ready to face whatever challenges the day would bring. She had been working closely with Clara at the shelter to organize a charity event aimed at raising funds for families in need, particularly those who had been hit hardest by the economic struggles of the past few years. Clara had been instrumental in getting the event off the ground, but it was Amina's drive, her heart, that had given it the momentum it needed. She was starting to realize that her capacity to give was only as strong as the connections she made, and she had forged many of those in the past months. This event, a community dinner paired with a silent auction, was meant to bring together local businesses, residents, and even strangers, to help those who were struggling. The idea had sparked from a conversation Amina had with Nadia, the young woman she had met at the shelter a few weeks ago. Nadia had expressed her own desire to help others, to give back to the community that had supported her during her toughest moments. Together, they brainstormed, reaching out to local businesses for donations and volunteers to serve food, and they quickly realized that they could build something special, something that would not only raise money, but also inspire people to see the power of collective action. Amina had always believed in the importance of community, but it was only now that she fully understood what that meant. It wasn't just about receiving help, it was about becoming an active participant in the cycles of generosity, where everyone played a part in making the world better. As the day of the event approached, Amina's excitement grew. She had been pouring herself into the planning, often staying up late with Clara and other volunteers, ensuring every detail was accounted for. The shelter, a place that had become her second home, was the heart of the event. And she knew that, in some way, this dinner was a culmination of everything she had learned about giving. It wasn't just about the money they would raise. It was about the sense of unity, the connections they were forming, and the impact those connections would have. The night before the event, Amina sat down to write her speech for the dinner. She had been asked to speak to the guests, to tell her story and explain the importance of the event. As she sat at the kitchen table, her children asleep in the next room, Amina thought about how far she had come since that first meeting with Keanu. She remembered the overwhelming sense of gratitude she had felt when he had helped her, and the emotion that had surged inside her when she realized that kindness could be a catalyst for something greater. She thought about the women she had helped along the way: Sarah, Layla, Nadia, and the countless others who had crossed her path. They all shared one thing in common. They were part of a larger story, a story of hope, perseverance, and humanity. Her pen moved across the paper as she began to write. When I look around this room tonight, I see more than just faces. I see strength. I see resilience. I see hope. This event, this dinner, is more than just a gathering. It's a celebration of what happens when we come together, when we share what we have, when we lift each other up. The kindness we give doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It can be as simple as offering a smile to a stranger, helping a neighbor with groceries, or being there for someone who is struggling. It's those small acts, compounded by others, that create a ripple effect that can change lives. I know this because I've seen it happen. I've experienced it myself. I was once a woman who didn't know how she was going to make it through the day. But I learned that no one has to carry their burdens alone. We are all part of a community, and together we can accomplish so much more than we could ever do on our own. And so, tonight, I ask that you remember this. Every time you reach out to someone, every time you offer a little bit of yourself to help others, you are part of something bigger. You are planting seeds of hope, and you are changing the world. And the beauty of it is that the more we give, the more we receive. Our hearts grow, and our communities thrive. Amina paused, reading over the words she had written. The speech was simple, but it captured the essence of everything she had come to understand. She had spent so much of her life focusing on what she didn't have, but now she saw that what truly mattered wasn't the material things. It was the relationships, the connections, and the kindness we offered to one another. The next evening, as Amina stood before a room full of people, the weight of her words felt different. This time, she wasn't just speaking from her own experience. She was speaking for everyone in that room. Each person had their own story, their own journey, but they were all united by one thing: their willingness to help. The event was a success beyond anyone's expectations. People came together, not just to donate money, but to share stories, offer support, and create bonds that would extend far beyond the evening. Nadia's tutoring program for children at the shelter received a great deal of attention, and several local businesses offered to sponsor it in the future. Sarah, who had been the recipient of Amina's kindness months ago, stood up and shared her story, expressing her gratitude for the support she had received and now how she was helping others in turn. Amina smiled as she watched the guests interact, the energy in the room electric with goodwill. As the night wore on, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the sense of unity that had been created. She had taken a step into the unknown, just as she had with Keanu. But now she was seeing the true power of that step. The connections they had formed that evening were more than just moments of kindness. They were the building blocks of a better future. As the event wound down and the last of the guests said their goodbyes, Amina felt a deep sense of peace. She had given so much of herself, but she had received even more in return. The event had not only raised funds for those in need, it had brought people together, reminding them that they weren't alone. And as Amina stood in the dimming light of the shelter, surrounded by people who were no longer strangers, she knew that this was just the beginning. The ripple of kindness that had started with one small gesture, one simple act of compassion, was now a wave, and she was ready to ride it, wherever it would take her. As she drove home that night, her children sleeping peacefully in the backseat, Amina thought about the journey she had been on. She was no longer just a woman surviving day to day. She was a woman thriving in the world, one small act of kindness at a time. And she knew that the story of her life would continue to unfold in beautiful, unexpected ways, a future built on compassion. The days following the charity event felt like a dream. Amina had always known that small acts of kindness could make a difference, but now she was witnessing it in a way that left her in awe. People she'd never met were reaching out to support the shelter, businesses were offering their services and donations, and the children at the shelter had new opportunities thanks to the volunteers who had stepped forward that night. What had started as one woman's simple act of generosity had spiraled into something much greater than anyone had expected. It was as if a new tide had risen, bringing with it hope and possibility. But as Amina reflected on how far she had come, she realized that this wasn't just about the people she had helped. It was about what she had learned along the way, the person she had become, and the impact that would continue to ripple outward. What had once been a solitary journey of survival was now a shared journey of compassion, growth, and transformation. The following weeks were filled with new opportunities, not just for Amina, but for those she had helped. Layla, the woman she had met at the grocery store, was thriving in her new job, and her children were excelling in school, thanks to the tutoring sessions Amina had helped organize. Sarah, who had struggled with her finances not long ago, had now found stability in her life. She had even started her own small business, one that helped other single mothers in the community who were trying to make ends meet. Sarah had begun to mentor others, offering the same support Amina had once given her. One afternoon, as Amina walked into the shelter, she saw Clara working with a group of volunteers. She was explaining the logistics of an upcoming program for children, and her face lit up when she saw Amina approaching. "Amina, there you are," Clara greeted her warmly. "I've been wanting to talk to you. Things are moving faster than we expected, and I think we need to start thinking about how we can sustain this momentum." Amina smiled, the thought of the shelter thriving filling her heart with warmth. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Well, for one thing, the demand for our programs has increased. We've been receiving more donations than we could have imagined, and we've been able to expand our offerings. But the need for community support is ongoing. I was thinking we could start offering job training programs for the adults who stay here, not just focusing on children, but helping the parents as well. We've already had a few people express interest in learning skills for employment." Amina's heart skipped a beat. "That's a brilliant idea, Clara. I've met so many people who just need that extra push to get back on their feet. We could teach them everything from basic computer skills to resume building. And we can offer it on a sliding scale, so everyone can participate, regardless of their financial situation." Clara nodded eagerly. "Exactly. And I was also thinking, maybe we could start a community mentorship program. We've been bringing in volunteers from all walks of life, and I think it's time we formally structure that. You've been a mentor to so many, Amina. Your story, your journey, it's exactly the kind of example people need to see. You've inspired so many of us." Amina felt a surge of humility. She had never thought of herself as a mentor, not in the traditional sense. She was just a woman who had been given a second chance by the kindness of a stranger. But now, it seemed that she was in a position to do the same for others, to offer the kind of support that had once been offered to her. "I'd be honored to help," Amina said, her voice steady with purpose. "If I can help even one person find their way, then I know this journey will have been worth it." The days that followed were filled with planning, brainstorming, and meeting with other community leaders who had heard about the shelter's work. The programs were growing, and Amina found herself more involved than ever. But even as her work at the shelter became more demanding, she still made time to focus on her children. They were thriving too. Layla was becoming more independent, and Ali, her youngest, had started showing a surprising talent for painting. Amina couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the life they were building together. One day, As Amina walked home from the shelter, she saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Layla, the woman who had once received help from her at the grocery store, walking hand in hand with her children. Layla spotted Amina and waved eagerly. "Mama Amina," Layla called out, her smile wide. "I just wanted to thank you again. My kids have been doing so much better. Thanks to you and everyone at the shelter. I don't know what I would have done without you." Amina's heart swelled with pride. "I'm just so glad to hear that, Layla. You've come so far." Layla nodded, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "We all have. And you've been the one to show us what it means to truly care for others. You helped me when I was at my lowest, and now I want to do the same. I'm thinking of opening a small business to help single mothers, offering affordable child care, especially for those who need it to work. I want to make sure they have the opportunities they deserve." Amina smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek as she looked at Layla and her children. It wasn't just that Layla had managed to turn her life around. It was that she was now in a position to help others do the same. "That's amazing, Layla," Amina said softly. "You're going to change so many lives. I believe in you." They embraced, and Amina realized that she had witnessed something profound, a full circle of giving. It was no longer just about one person helping another. It was about a community coming together, offering support, and empowering others to give back. As the months passed, the shelter continued to grow and thrive, and so did Amina. She had become a cornerstone of the community, a symbol of what kindness, resilience, and generosity could accomplish. But Amina knew that her work wasn't done. The world was vast, and there were still so many people who needed help, people who had yet to feel the warmth of a kind gesture. One evening, after a long day of work, Amina sat with her children on the couch. The house was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the evening. Ali had a sketchbook in hand, drawing pictures of animals, while Layla sat beside her, reading a book. The feeling of peace in the room was overwhelming. They were safe, they were together, and most importantly, they were part of something bigger than themselves. Amina's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Clara. "We've been approached by a large community organization that wants to partner with us. They've heard about the work we're doing and want to provide funding to expand our programs even further. This is big, Amina. This could change everything." Amina stared at the message for a moment, her heart racing. The opportunity was enormous, but with it came new challenges. She knew that this new phase would require even more from her, but she also knew that this was the next step in a journey she was now fully committed to. Amina put down the phone and turned to her children. She smiled at them, a deep sense of fulfillment in her heart. They had come so far, and now they were on the verge of something even bigger. Her life had been transformed by a simple act of kindness, a gesture that had rippled outward and brought so many people together. And now it was time to build the future they all deserved. As Amina looked at the horizon, she knew this was just the beginning. Her heart, once filled with uncertainty, was now filled with a sense of purpose. She was part of a greater story, a story that was still unfolding. And with each step, she would continue to spread kindness, to help others rise, and to build a world where no one ever had to face their struggles alone. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun.